Welcome to episode 40 of the Non-Fungibles podcast. I'm Luke, and unfortunately George wasn't able to make this episode, so we have brought in a guest interviewer, Christian Miles, who has worked in and out of the tech industry since 2000 in sectors such as banking, logistics, e-commerce, and now Web3, where he is building infrastructure on the Flow blockchain with his company Find.xyz. Christian has also run therapeutic children's homes and semi-independent services for individuals with a history of trauma. So he is well placed to join me along with our guest today, Hazel Gale from Betwixt. Hazel is an artist. She is author of the Mind Monster Solution. She is a former therapist. And she is also an ex-kickboxer and boxer, having won multiple world titles. Hazel joins us to talk about her project Betwixt, which is a fantasy choose-your-own-adventure game that takes you on a journey of self-discovery and broadly fits into my made-up category of therapeutic game with generative NFT art, which customizes to you around your self-discovery adventure. Betwixt are doing something really interesting, and we have a fantastic conversation exploring that. So please enjoy our conversation with Hazel Gale.
Welcome to the Non-Fund Gerbils podcast, the show about digitally scarce gerbils, non-fungible assets, and the growing decentralized economy.
So Hazel Gale from Betwixt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You are doing quite a unique project in the space. Maybe we could start with your background and how you got here.
Okay, I mean, my background is all over the place. I'm the most relevant part of it is that I was a therapist up until quite recently. So I started out actually in sport. Well, I started out in art before that. Moved into sport. I was a kickboxer and boxer on the international circuit for about 10 years. But I burnt out horribly during that time and hit a complete physical and mental rock bottom, which saw me desperately wandering into a number of different doctors' offices and not being able to fix it, and ultimately had to visit a therapist. And then I realised where I'd been going wrong. So taking a psychological look at my approach to, well, life in general and in particular to sport and fighting, made me realise that I was getting everything completely wrong, and I was putting too much pressure on myself. And so therapy did help me back onto my feet, help me back into the ring. It allowed me to win some titles that felt meaningful at the time, but ultimately it wasn't the world I wanted to be in. So I trained up to become a therapist, practicing as a therapist for around 10 years. And I've just recently stopped seeing clients because of this project.
Okay, so you've got a lot of angry clients out there, very upset about...
Hopefully not. It wasn't an abrupt stop. They were given warning.
I'm sure they can be. I'm sure they're probably engaging with the product now instead with the project.
Hopefully.
So, what is the project? What is Betwixt?
So, Betwixt is a choose-your-own-adventure game that takes you on a journey of self-discovery. As you go through this journey, you get to co-create the story actually that you're involved in, the world that you're in, and also a work of generative art, which forms itself based on the choices that you make in the game. So what that means is that the deeper you get to know yourself while on this journey, the more complex and vivid and beautiful your NFT visual becomes. The game itself is gated by an NFT at the moment. So currently you have to have an NFT to play, and on the 11th, when we launch this, this will be the first cohort going through it. When they get their NFT, when holder has their NFT, that unlocks an app on their phone. When you go into the app, you find yourself in this strange frozen world that responds to your thoughts and feelings. It's a fantasy world. Your mission in the game is to escape. And in order to do that, you need to learn how to see yourself clearly. So, of course, on this journey, you meet various obstacles and enemies and foes. You also get to befriend a mysterious guide known only as the Voice, who helps you to kind of accumulate and find self-insight and clarity on things that you want to think about. The Voice does this by helping you to engage with questions and ideas in a novel and creative way.
Very interesting. Is the game done?
Yes, the game has been finished for a while. We've been building it for 3 years. We've tested it with over 6,000 people in various different incantations. You know, it's gone through a hell of a lot of iteration. Of course, it has. anything would do. But in particular, because we were doing something we haven't seen done before, there were no rules for us to follow. So everything that we've done has been based on feedback, and we've spoken to as many of our testers as we possibly could squeeze in, which has been actually really wonderful. It's been amazing to get to know those people and to hear their experience of going through this story and how different it can be for everybody.
And so, what's the purpose of the game? The game's impact on the user.
So what you're doing in the game is building self-awareness. Now, self-awareness, if you go into the research behind self-awareness, you'll find that there is basically nothing in life that it doesn't affect in a positive way. You know, it's linked to better physical health. It's linked to far better and more robust relationships. It's linked to better success, better exam results. You know, you can probably find a study for pretty much anything that you wanted to look at. So that's what we wanted the game to do, was to address the different kind of pillars of self-awareness from different angles, so people can just build up this sense of self as they go through it. And in terms of wellness, the biggest impacts that we're seeing it have on people are on stress, depression, and rumination. We can't talk about it yet officially because it's not published, but we do have a study that's going to be coming out soon, which has shown some really amazing effects on those things, along with self-compassion. So unfortunately, I can't tell you any more than that right now. I'm not even sure I'm allowed to have told you that, but I expect so. Yeah, so that's exciting.
So are you measuring wellness?
With the game, no, but with any studies that we get involved in, we're currently looking for a number. We want to do as many studies as possible. We're really interested in the impact of this, and we're interested in exactly how it's happening. So we really want to get a group of neuroscientists, neuroscience researchers together to look at what the mechanisms actually are in this that are helping it to be effective. You know, we have lots and lots of hypotheses. We know what we think is happening. We want some concrete proof. But yeah, with the game itself, we are not measuring anything. The people who play the game, they are not participants in some kind of study automatically unless they sign up to one of the studies.
I'm with you. Okay, and so the journey that they go on app is effectively kept on app.
Yes, the journey they go on is 100% confidential. It's all theirs, and it only exists in the app. The journey itself is going to be an 11-week process. So there are 11 quests. They're called dreams. Each chapter of the game is a dream. During this 11-week journey, you level up from seeker. You're the seeker at the beginning. You level up to hero of the story partway through, and you would think that was the end, but no, there are stages beyond that. Once you move past hero, you become the author of the story, and once you move past author, you become the architect of the world. So not this world, that world. Well, either. And so that's the progression. And these dreams, when we launch with the first cohort and cohorts after that, they're going to drop weekly at the same time for everybody. So when you play the game, you're actually going through it with a cohort of people. You're not under any pressure to keep up. It doesn't matter if you fall behind for whatever reason, but it's great if you do keep up, because then you're going to be in time with others. And every time you finish a dream, two things happen. First, you get to see the evolution of the artwork. So what kind of impact have your choices in that last dream made to this visual image? And if you wanted to, you could play the dream again, actually, at that stage as well. But also, you get to unlock a dedicated Discord channel on our server for those who are at the same stage of the journey as you, where you can connect with us, the team, and you can connect with the other holders. You can engage in some mini creative games and tasks we have in there, as well as have conversations about what's coming up for you and what you find interesting, what you're struggling with, whatever. It's not a therapy space. It's a creative space, but it's one that everybody will be at the same stage to be in, which is lovely. At the very end of the whole journey, you not only get your unique generative artwork that you have created, but also an animation of its evolution from start to finish, which is a really interesting thing because it's this lovely sense of symbolizing all of these different stages of the journey. And since you see the image evolving as you go through the journey, you'll be linking certain colors and certain bits of the image to certain experiences you've had. So potentially it's going to help you with the learning process involved in this as well, rather than just having theory going in one ear and out the other. It's more of an experiential thing.
Amazing.
super interesting concept for a project. I had a play with the so you can download the app now and play the sort of demo,
Yes, just one chapter.
one chapter, and I went through that. It was interesting the way that it fed back. It would stop and it would ask you questions and it would get interactions for you so many times through. And this is for anyone listening, obviously hasn't seen it yet. But there's various forks in the road, and you have to choose what reaction you would have to a certain situation, and then it tailors back to you based on your reaction. And I can see a sort of path forming where it's bringing you out, and it's working on the things that you want to work on in terms of that you feel that you're lacking. And so having a process where you go through that in a game scenario, and you have an NFT that grows as you grow, is such a fantastic use of NFTs, because it also, as an artwork, it will work as a sort of, correct me if I'm wrong, but it'll work as a sort of trigger or peg that you can look back to and remind yourself of the state that you're in coming out of a particular session, and of that whole journey that you've gone on. And so it's like a keepsake that's a useful tool that you can use to go back into. I can't imagine anyone ever selling their NFT.
Well, that's the thing. You could. So that's a really important point, actually. It's something that's not clear in all of this unless I explain it. And that's that most people assume that the NFT is going to give you the opportunity to play the game, create the artwork, and then it will sort of solidify on that final artwork, and then that's the NFT from then on. That's not actually the case. If you choose to sell your NFT on to someone else, or gift it to a friend or family member, or just move it from one of your wallets to another one of your wallets, the game automatically resets. So the next person then gets to play their own version of it. They cannot see any of your answers. So obviously your journey is confidential, but what they can see is your final image, sort of an echo of it on the blockchain. So the more times that an NFT gets sold and reused, the more images that will back up on the NFT. The NFT will end up with this sort of chain, hopefully a very long chain of people's images all looking different, that are a little like tracks in the snow, like footprints of the people who've been there and walked that path before you, which is a really lovely thing. So even if you don't want to get rid of your NFT and you just want to gift it to your family members to play the game, that's fine. You could do that. You can have all of your images on the stored on the blockchain together.
That's very cool.
I love that. So just to gain some clarity on exactly what that means, when you gift that NFT to somebody else, or you sell it, or whatever you might want to do you then, when you load up the app, effectively see a history of the pictures created using that NFT?
At the moment, the history won't be in the actual app. It'll be on the blockchain. So if you look on OpenSea, you'll be able to see them.
Really?
But I imagine that one of the things that we'll do as soon as we can is make a sort of viewing gallery in the app itself. Not so relevant right now, because right now there is no history, because the first people are going to be going through it for the first time. But yeah, it would be a lovely thing for us to do, create a window for that in the app, so you can look at the tracks before you.
Sort of thing you can imagine passing on to your grandkids.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
This was my journey back in 2022.
Yeah.
Well, and then this represented me at this point, and it represented your auntie like this, and it represented your uncle like this, and it's all the same piece. And actually, you could have an entire family of people represented by how they were feeling at that one time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that would be. I often think, who is it? Is it Manet who had a blue period? Who was it? The famous artist who had the blue period? Anyone remember?
Sorry,
I really should know this. I've
I
got a
think you're
degree in
asking the
art.
wrong person here. Yeah.
Anyway, one of them, the Impressionists, I think, had a blue period, and I was thinking, because the different images, they end up with these different sort of overall colour feels, and whether they're light or dark or whatever. And if you replayed it a number of times yourself, looking at different issues or in different stages of your life, this is the one when I was drinking too much. This is when I was falling in love. This is when I was whatever. You can have all these different images, and I just sort of love this idea of printing them out and then be able to look back and go, oh yes, that was my blue period.
Yeah. So going back to the psychological aspects of the app, then, is the app therapeutically informed? And if it is, what have you done? What applied principles are there?
So it's based on evidence-based theory and tools. Mainly there are a number of things that go into it. One of the key pieces of research we've been doing is looking into the Tasha Urich's research into self-awareness and what it requires to actually be, for someone to actually be self-aware. That's an interesting thing. This is a minor detour, but Urich has written a book on self-awareness. She's also done a TED talk. It's very interesting and quite illuminating, because she starts out by talking about how most people in the world believe they have some level of self-awareness. But if you actually test it properly, I think she said somewhere in the region of 85% of people believe they had self-awareness. But when they properly tested it, it was more like somewhere between 10 and 15% of people have actual self-awareness. So the vast majority of us are walking around thinking we know ourselves. We're totally wrong. So Urich breaks down the concept into 7 different pillars of self-awareness, and these involve the things we need to know about ourselves, our values, our principles, our desires, our strengths, all that stuff, the things that we would usually associate, I think, with self-awareness. But the other really critical part is what's known as external self-awareness, which is how other people see you, the impact you have on others, the impact you have on the world. And that is often missed. It doesn't matter how much internal self-awareness you have. If you don't have that external self-awareness piece, you're potentially, you may as well have none. It's just not, you can't function properly in the world if you don't know how other people are seeing you. It works the other way around as well. If you have only external self-awareness but no internal self-awareness, that's not good either. You need both. So then we wanted to create a game that was going to help people build self-awareness, and of both kinds. And so that leads into probably the main tool that is used throughout the game in various different ways, which is self-distancing or psychological distancing. So that is very simply seeing yourself from the outside. It's enormously powerful, not just for building external self-awareness, but also for letting go of anxiety and rumination, for checking in on when you're making an assumption about what other people see in you, the types of limiting beliefs that we have. I'm stupid, I'm ugly, I'm useless. You step out of the first person perspective and you look back at who you are and you see something quite different. So we've been using self-distancing throughout the game. It's present in most chapters in various different ways, because one thing we really want people to come away from the game with is this ability to self-distance.
Interesting. And so, insofar as, because I think you were quite careful earlier to say that that there's no therapeutic inputs at this stage.
There is therapeutic input, but it's not therapy.
Okay.
What we have to be very careful to say is that it's not a replacement for therapy. It's not a replacement for seeing your doctor, obviously, but still, that's really important to say. There is no human being monitoring the interactions you have with the game. So it is there, it's supplementary to anything else that you would need to do in order to improve your mental health. And so it is not therapy, but it is therapeutically informed. It's based on these methods. It's created by I've been working as a therapist for 10 years, but we've also consulted with various others, behavioural expert, a lot of researchers, to psychiatrists from the British Board of Psychiatry and a great company called Gaming the Mind. Have also been reviewing and inputting on the different chapters. So there is therapy in it. It's just not therapy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally get it. Yeah, and it's a very, very thin line to balance on as well. So, and I think you've done that amazingly well. It's I suppose really where I was going with that question was, do you foresee a time where a user may want to download what is in effect an assessment, if that's what they want to call it, to then share with a MDT or with their psychologist or otherwise? Because actually, one of the things that people struggle with most is attachment in these cases, particularly when they have a psychologist or a therapist. And what they could actually say is, look, I'm not ready to talk about this, but here's a download of the experience that I had on this app, and this could define the way that I'm feeling right now in a way that I just don't have the capacity to.
to express to a
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
I mean, I do see that as a possibility. One of the things we thought about when we started making it was that this was something that could go in that in between stage when somebody is thinking that they might be interested in getting some therapy, but they're not ready yet, or they don't feel culturally allowed to, or they don't have the money to. There's lots of reasons why people aren't able to get therapy when they want it. And so even though, yes, we're not a replacement for therapy, it is something that could help people, actually can help people to practice talking about stuff, to have a real, a safe exposure to the questions in a very private way, where they get to play with this, the idea of getting involved in it. I mean, you do, when you play the game, it's a text game, and a lot of the choices are options. They're pre-written options that you choose between. But in Every Dream, there are other moments where you free write into the game, so you communicate totally freely. And they're like a little like journaling prompts or journaling exercises. We looked a lot into the research behind expressive writing before starting this. Expressive writing is basically journaling, like emotional writing. And lots of studies on expressive writing have shown it to be comparable to one-on-one therapy when dealing with certain emotions. So, or struggling with certain emotions. So it's it's entirely possible that you could get a real head start with something like this, if before you move on to either a therapist or a journaling practice or whatever else it is that you're going to do.
Amazing. I honestly think that could be a huge icebreaker for a lot of people, particularly from my experience. We have children's homes that deliver therapy and not in some cases, and particularly around journaling, there's a resistance to do so.
Yeah.
One, because they're having to put down their feelings on paper, which is a very difficult thing to do, and two, because it's bloody boring. And actually, if you've got a game that makes it interesting to do so and engaging, then that's a really powerful tool, and definitely something that I'd love to see harnessed more into the future.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things we thought is that it would be a great thing to be used at the waiting list stage as well. And the engagement piece is the whole point of why we're doing this. When we looked into this idea initially, we did a lot of research, of course, on the existing mental health apps. Now, there are some brilliant mental health apps out there that use things like AI and stuff to get you doing CBT processes, protocols, and things like that. In developer-led trials, they often test really well. But in the wild, they don't get the effects they need to, purely because people don't stick with them. The retention rates are really low, something like maximum of 3% or something like that, for people staying in the process, because of all the reasons you mentioned, not just journaling. It's intimidating to do that work. There's resistance, of course, that's part of it. It's hard. It's hard work to get involved in it. So if all you have is some kind of cute AI creature on your screen asking you these questions, there's not that much to pull you back. But if there's a narrative that you want to see how it plays out, if there's a sense of relationship with the key character in the game, all these things can make it much easier for somebody to actually willingly walk back into the process and continue.
Totally agree. And yeah, I mean, I won't cover other apps, but I haven't found a good one yet.
Well, my personal retention to meditation is probably around that 3% mark. And actually, as you say, incorporating it into a game and having bits of meditation, bits of journaling, it makes it less intimidating to just say, right, I'm going to do meditation every day for a month or however long. And it's a great way to bring people in and get them actually doing it actively as part of a bigger process.
And it would hopefully cause natural reflection as well, just naturally, which is super good for the mind. So I'm sold. When can I buy an NFT? I want one.
On the 11th of July. Yeah.
Oh, I have to wait that long. Jeez.
Pre-sales 11th of July anyway. Pre-sale 11th of July, public sale, assuming that there are some left, 12th of July. It's not the best time in terms of crypto and what's going on in the world potentially to be launching a project like this, but we're not waiting around because we really, really want to get the show on the road.
I think you're more likely to get the right users at this stage in the market. The people who are really actually interested in the stuff rather than just the speculators.
Yeah.
You said you had 6,000 people involved in testing the app?
Yes, I mean, it's gone through, over the last 3 years, it's gone through a lot of different iterations. It started out as an extremely basic, we used ManyChat, which is a way to influence conversations that happen through Facebook Messenger. So we used that to build a really basic version of the game a number of years ago, and started testing that out. Now, we weren't expecting to get, we were hoping, but we weren't really expecting to get a good response from that. What we had assumed was that people would kind of like the story, but as soon as it started to feel like therapy, they'd be turned off. That wasn't how it was at all. In fact, people, what they felt that the moment they were really, really involved in it was when they got to the therapy parts, because that's when they got to co-create this world. That's when it became theirs. One of our testers said that. They said, that was the point at which I knew the version of this game that I was playing and the world that I was inhabiting, because at that point you'd been describing a part of the world, was unique to me and nobody else is going to have the same one, and that felt special. So we moved on from there and built a beta version of the game, and we tested that with many, many people. I don't know what number of people we had testing there, but that's when there was hundreds, certainly maybe close to 1,000, and we had in-depth conversation with a lot of people there. Then we launched the first 5 chapters of the game on the iOS store, and we tested through there, and we ran the study that I mentioned earlier on through there as well. We've now reduced the 5 chapters down to 1, so that if anyone wants a taster of it, they can go and play the 1 chapter, but they're not going to ruin their experience. We don't want people to have played the whole game and then have to play it again in order to create their NFT. So there's just the 1 chapter there now to go and have a taste of.
Oh, did you say it takes about 6 weeks to run through? Was it 11 weeks?
No, it's 11 weeks. We're going to be dropping the dreams 1 per week.
Oh, okay.
So you'll play the dream. You'll see how your artwork has come on. Then you join a dedicated channel in our server for that dream, where you can discuss the dream with other people there. We're going to be running mini journaling tasks. There are going to be self-hypnosis sessions as well available there for people to use, related to the dreams, and various other bits and bobs that people can do to really use that week to process what they experienced in the dream. When we released the first 5 dreams on the app, we found that there were 2 types of people who were using it. There were bingers who were literally just playing the 5 apps in one sitting, the 5 dreams in one sitting, which is, it's cool, but at the same time, I don't expect they were really processing or using much of the information from the first few dreams if they were doing that. And then there were other people who imposed wait time on themselves. They said they wanted to process it before they moved on, and they were giving themselves either a week or 2 weeks sometimes to move on to the next dream. And so we thought, okay, well, let's do that on purpose. But what was so wonderful about coming into Web3 is that all of this extra community involvement stuff was at our fingertips as soon as we came to Web3. So when it was a Web2 thing, it was a primarily solitary venture. You played the app on your own, at your own pace. Sure, there's a sense of connection with the character in it, and there really is a genuine sense of connection. We've heard that lots of times from people who say, I know it's an algorithm, but I can't shake the feeling that I've made a friend, or I'm building a friendship, which is very cool. But ultimately, it was a solitary experience. Now here in Web3, we have the Discord community, which is already wonderful. We've been, in order to give away our pre-sale spots, we've been having people engage with very creative journaling or writing exercises, basically. People don't need to have been good writers to get a pre-sale spot. They just need to have engaged with it. And some people have been writing these amazing short stories. Sometimes we've done something like, a sort of self-awareness based prompt, tell us about your values, whatever, kind of boring stuff. But as we moved on, we realized just how creative these people were. And we started putting out these story starters. So they were borrowed from or adapted from creative writing exercises, which are for authors, wanting to practice their writing. So story starters like, it was a bad day for Mr. P. It couldn't have got any worse. Or other stuff, I can't remember. I can't think of any other examples. Don't know why the Mr. P one always stuck in my head. I think it was quite funny. Some of them were funny. Some of them were dark. Some of them were emotional. And we put this thing out there and we said, let's just see what people do with it. Oh my word. They were writing these incredible stories based on this first sentence. that were so insightful and interesting. One of them, I was genuinely annoyed that it ended. They managed to set up this. They managed to set up this like world, and I was like, "What happens next?" So at that point, we were like, "Okay, this is now. We don't need to treat these people with kid gloves. These are a group of. This is a group of people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and get really involved in the creativity of something like this, which is perfect for our game because they'll be the people who will get the most out of it. But it also means that we can have this amazing connected community who are okay to be creative and get vulnerable with each other and do all this stuff on Discord in the week in between dreams."
That's awesome. And so the first 11 chapters are taking place on the 11th, which I like. And beyond that, then, are you looking at developing like a seasonal, chapter-driven, almost episodic sort of phase, or what's the plan there?
We don't know yet. We want to, and as with all of our decisions, it will come down to what people want. Do we write a different story? Do we continue this story in some way? Do we make it more self-directed? The other things that we're interested in are, do we bring in some serious AI that can allow people to create their own stories? Do we move it into VR? I'd love to move it into VR or AR and make it an actual world that you step into and do this with. All of these things are entirely possible. We need to decide which one is going to be best received and work best. Another option is an entirely audio version of it as well. There is an amazing soundscape with it, by the way. So it's text-based, but you play with headphones, and our musician and sound engineer, Nikolai Sadreas, he's an amazing man. He's made this wonderful soundscape, so it brings you into the world. So we had to pare it back. At first, it was quite complex, and I realised it was getting in the way of being able to really pay attention to the story that you're reading. So we pared it back. And there are moments where it's, sometimes it's just the wind of the world. And then later on in the game, and I don't want to give any spoilers, the world changes a lot as you go through it. So it becomes a totally different space with very different sounds. And so then there are different music tracks as you move on as well. And we've had a lot of feedback from people saying, actually, we've had a number of different people with ADHD saying that they really struggle to read novels or books because of their ADHD. They just can't get to the end of a page without having lost attention at one point or another. And yet, because of the pacing of the language in Betwixt and because of the soundscape bringing you into the world, they've been able to stick with it. People have been really quite excited about that because they haven't really been able to enjoy fiction before because of the ADHD getting in the way of their focus.
Amazing.
Yeah, I was very impressed with the sound stage, and not only just in the story part, but also in the meditation part, which I thought worked really well.
So is there an element of ASMR in all of this?
I don't think that we haven't intentionally gone with ASMR. I have to admit that I'm one of the people who hates ASMR, just because I cannot stand sounds like mouth noises.
I'm with you.
And hair brushing. And so when I see these people and they're right next to the microphone breathing on it and slobbering over, I'm like, this is not relaxing for me.
No, me either. Although I hope that ASMR extends beyond just nails down a chalkboard. At some point, I'm hoping we're going to get there, because I personally am affected by different sounds. And particularly with music, I can sit in a car and it's a hot day, and a song comes on, and I have my hair stand on end, and I get goosebumps all up and down me, and I think that's a really nice therapeutic way to reflect again, because it takes you back to a space, or it makes you think about a certain experience, or otherwise, and so you remember things on the sounds, and actually it sounds like what you're doing there is going to at least evoke a very similar emotion.
And it's the same, the anchoring as well, that Luke was mentioning earlier on, that the artwork will anchor people into, certain memories, experiences from the game, certain periods of life, or whatever. The music will absolutely do that as well. So the music gets repeated in different forms as you go through the game, so you get to know the tracks in it. And they're really beautiful. I really, really like them. And the other thing is that the ambience that happens in between the more involved bits of music, so for example, the wind sound that you get at the beginning in this snowy world, it's just like white noise, really, which is wonderful. I mean, white noise for me is, I need to put it on quite often just because I get really distracted by sounds around me. So white noise for me is a lifesaver, and the game, supplies something very similar with this wind. And there are other, Nick's puts all of the sound is made. So there's a section in the first stream, I can say this without any spoilers, where you dig through snow, and I was like, Nick, we need some digging sounds, some snowy digging sounds. And he went away for about a week, and he came back and he was like, I think I know how to do it with some icing sugar in a teacup. And I was like, really? Okay, fine, give that a go. They sound exactly like digging through snow. It's amazing. And then even better than that, there is I'm trying to be spoiler safe here, but there's you find yourself in a lost city at one point. Now we were creating the sound for that section of the game in the first ever COVID lockdown. And so Nick, who lives very central in London, went out into central London, which was a ghost town, for the first time in hundreds of years. And recorded dead London in the middle of the night, which is an opportunity that we would never have been able to have if it wasn't for COVID. So that's there in the game somewhere. And there's another point. There's a very dramatic point where there's a kind of a battle going on, and I asked for some ambience that also felt a little bit uneasy. And he said, right, ambient terror coming right up. Yeah. So we've now got a track in there called Ambient Terror, and it's my favourite. So it's been a real joy working with him.
Oh, wow.
Well, we haven't got COVID to thank for much, but that can be certainly one thing that we can. And thankfully, he was there to go out and record it. So
and he thought of it, yeah.
Yeah. At what point did the NFT make its way into the game? Where did that take hold?
I don't remember exactly when it was. But it all happened very fast. So when we were speaking to investors, more traditional business model point of the process, and they were all expecting and wanting us to go into a subscription service, which absolutely can be prohibitively expensive for a lot of people. And we weren't enormously keen on it, but we couldn't really see any other way of turning it into something that would be financially viable, so we could pay our team and ourselves and keep the thing going. And then as we were battling with this and having all these difficult conversations with investors who wanted us to just turn it into all the other apps out there, and we were like, the whole point of this is that we're trying to do something different to those because they they're turning people off. But somewhere along the line, we were both looking at NFTs and hearing a lot about NFTs, and they just kept popping up all over the place. This must have been early in 2020. Actually, because that was when when the big NFT boom was happening, so it must have been around then. And we started looking at it with a bit of a side eye. We were like, what's all that? And had no idea about it at all. And then the next thing I know, Ellie, my co-founder Ellie, who is a bona fide genius, she had just dived in and started speaking to people in the Web3 space, and she came back with a load of information and some stuff for me to watch, and she was like, I think we should do it. And I was like, okay. I did have a few sleepless nights for a while because we were sort of wandering into this world I didn't know anything about, and it was all so new and different, and I was like, I don't know how we can control any of this. And she was like, no, I don't think we can, but maybe that's the point. And then within a couple of weeks we had started speaking with Andrash, who owns the company, which they were called Ether Cards. They're now called Galaxis.
Oh yeah,
who
I know them.
We're going to have the NFTs on their platform. And then shortly after that, we spoke with Jason from Gala Games, who got the public vote with their node holders going for the $1 million grant that we received. That happened in January this year. So this year got off to, that was the best Christmas present I've ever had. Got off to an amazing start. So the move into the world happened. Yeah, it must have happened halfway through 2021, and then by the beginning of 22, we were rolling.
It makes total sense because I mean it is like a subscription, but it's a subscription that you can sell on, and so it's not just lost. And obviously there's much more to it being an NFT as well and being art.
I mean, the art was just. I mean, even if we weren't going to stay in Web3, which we are, but even if we weren't, the art would be something we'd obviously bring out. It wouldn't be an NFT outside of Web3, of course, but it would still be part of the game because it's just added this wonderful dimension that we wouldn't have got otherwise.
So how does it work? I think you have explained this, but it's sort of in a more succinct way. People are going to buy the access token in effect, so they'll buy access to the app, and you will then. Do you have to log into MetaMask on the app?
So you buy the NFT as you would buy any other NFT. What it will look like is a starter image. It will look like a very sort of a line drawing. Actually, it will look like a basic version of. Here we go. Let me see if I can possibly do this here. This is not the ideal way of doing it. Can you see that? There we go. So it'll look a bit like that. And that is your blank canvas, essentially. You buy it as you would any other NFT. Then you log into the app and create an account. Now, in order to log into the app, you need to have proof of purchase of the NFT. This bit, I don't know exactly how it works. I would need to ask my developers to tell you. I haven't got the information yet. But there's something that
some magic behind the scene there.
Yeah, something happens.
Some magic that gives you an identifier that proves that you have the NFT. Then you create an account as you would in any other app, and then you're off. Then you're inside the app and you play the first stream when it is dropped. A similar thing happening with Discord. You can only join the private part of the Discord for holders if you have this if you have your NFT to log in with.
Yeah. And the public drop is the 12th. But when does the first chapter drop?
We haven't set a date for that yet because it will depend on how things come together. But I'm imagining probably within 2 weeks of the 11th.
Makes sense. Although the first chapter is available on the app anyway, isn't it? So will that always be there, or when you confirm a purchase, will it sort of reset the whole thing?
No, the first chapter is available on the iOS app, so it's totally different. If you play the iOS app version of it, sure, you can play it, but it won't be your NFT one. When you join the NFT launch, you'll be playing on a progressive web app, which is of course available on iOS and Android. And you would have to play Dream 1 again because then it would need to be taking your variables out and using them for the artwork.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah. That's why we reduced the number of chapters on the iOS down to 1, because it would be a nightmare if everyone was playing a good chunk of chapters there and then had to replay them all just to get their artwork going.
Yeah, I completely agree. So the iOS app then, just for clarity, is effectively a shop window. Exactly. Gives people an insight into exactly what's happening. And then the progressive web app is where the real action happens. Okay, that makes things clearer for me as well, insofar as how they will confirm the NFT. And yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I don't think it would be possible on the iOS app.
It would, but it's actually technically very difficult. So the progressive web app makes total sense, and is a better decision in my opinion as well. So I had a couple of other questions, but I don't think that they are relevant really, because it was more around psychological outcome and outcome of assessment. And actually, maybe in a year's time we can have that conversation. And as this thing starts to really develop and take hold, and if you could get the RCP involved or something like that, to really push because from a personal perspective, I would love to see this used as a desktop assessment companion app. Just so that as this journey for people takes place, they can make use of it, and that can inform then a therapeutic approach externally, because I think there's such a barrier to entry at that point across particularly for Brits, because we're taught not to necessarily show our emotions very quickly, and certainly not to share them with anybody who we think might be difficult in their world. And to have something like this as a companion to that at the user's control, so it's I love the fact that you said, look, this all stays locally to the user, and they're in control, and it's totally down to them what they do and how they do it, but if they had a button then that said, actually, you can download this as a desktop assessment, amazing. Send it to whoever you need to, and they'll have a really good insight.
Yeah, and I think it would already be something that people could use in conjunction with therapy. Therapists wouldn't even necessarily need to know the game, but they could say, okay, this question came up and it made me think about this, and you could then go deeper level of detail into the topic with your therapist or a friend. We had during our early stages of testing, we had an amazing guy who was testing at the same time as caring for one of his friends who was maybe terminally ill, but certainly very seriously ill. And he said that he got his friend to play, and they both played at the same time, and then they talked about it. He said it was wonderful because it gave them a shared language to discuss the stuff that they were going through, they were each going through on their journeys, that they wouldn't have had before, which was very, it was very lovely. And there was another guy testing then who was he was just, Ellie actually interviewed him to begin with, and he was very nice, but he was kind of monosyllabic in his responses to all questions. And she was like, well, this is he's not going to get on with the game. We obviously gave him the game to play, to test. When he came back for his post-play interview, he was still monosyllabic, but he shared the stuff that he'd been writing into the game, and there was reams of information there in the game, whereas face-to-face, talking with us, he found it very hard to communicate. So that was a really interesting moment. We're like, okay, this is quite key, because there's something happening in this space of the game that makes it safe enough for people to talk in a way that they perhaps wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah, you're taking the human element away from it, which a lot of people are afraid of. And I think that for me is what's captured my attention here is actually, and I haven't used the game yet, so I can't. It would be unfair for me to say that this would work or will work or otherwise. I have no idea, but the idea itself is amazing, and I think just having people like you thinking about these things is very positive for people who may not otherwise ever really touch any form of therapeutic interventions. And this may very well be the catalyst necessary for people to say, actually, you know what, this wasn't so bad. And so I can probably go and talk to somebody else now.
We have also had a number of testers do that as well and get back to us afterwards and say, after playing the game, I went to see a therapist and now I'm working through this and things are changing.
Amazing.
It's great. Because this was actually at the core of our motivation to make it, was that people think of therapy as a place that you go when you're in a real mess and you need fixing, and B, hard work, laborious, uncomfortable silences, all that stuff that we assume therapy to be. And it can be all those things, but it can also be fascinating. Learning what's going on in your mind and learning motivations you hadn't realized were totally driving you. These things are really quite intriguing. And you can get quite hooked on this experience of uncovering the inner workings of yourself. I mean, everybody likes a conversation about themselves, let's be honest. And this is what therapy really is. And so we'd actually, another thing we had testers saying was that they came out of curiosity, and they came because they wanted this story to take them through something. So they came essentially for the entertainment, but they ended up feeling hooked on the sheer thrill of self-discovery. And that is a massive thing, because the people who have, in Tasha Urich's study on self-aware people, the people who were actually self-aware were rare enough for her to call them unicorns. And what self-awareness unicorns have is firstly an interest in themselves, an interest in self-insight and discovering those things, and a commitment, a lifelong commitment really, to continue expanding their knowledge about it. That's really the only thing those people have differently to other people who are totally unself-aware. And so we can all get hold of those things if we're just fed the information in a way that's interesting enough for us to interesting and doable enough for us to get involved with. And that's what we wanted to create with the game.
Have you teamed up with any charities at this stage?
No.
Nice and succinct. I like that.
We can cut that bit out.
Yep. Let's move on.
Next.
Well, I mean, this is really fascinating. Where do people need to go? What do they need to do to become a self-awareness unicorn?
With us, a Betwixt unicorn. Okay, they need to come and join our Discord. So we are still giving away pre-sale spots. We've got a few left, not that many actually, but we do have a few left. So hopefully by the time this goes out, there will still be some. If they come and join our Discord, then take part in these mini games, creativity type games we have, they can win a pre-sale spot. Even if they don't win a pre-sale spot, they can be a part of the public sale, which is the day after the pre-sale. So they'll need to be in the Discord for that as well. They can also follow us on Twitter, and that's where they'll find the link to our Discord. So our Twitter handle is Betwixt.NFT. That's BETWIXT NFT. The Discord link is there. You can also see some examples of the artwork. I haven't actually mentioned the artist. The artist that we're working with is an amazing guy called Holger Lippmann, he's actually a pioneer, one of the pioneers of generative art. He was making digital generative art from the 90s onwards, and he was living in Berlin with, the electro scene going on there. So he was right at the heart of that kind of world, and still is, I believe. So he's wonderful, and the artwork he's making is really, really beautiful. And I think that we've got the best algorithm of his as well. I love it. And you can see some examples of that on our Twitter as well. So join us on Twitter, come to the Discord, and that's how you get involved.
Amazing. Well, Hazel, thank you very much. This has been illuminating.
Pleasure.
Are you right, Christian?
Christian's headphones.
We've lost him.
Run out of batteries.
He's well, I mean, it's good. If you're going to drop out at any time, now's probably the right time. I expect he's going to just rejoin on the laptop or something. There we go.
Only a slight nightmare. Received a phone call.
No.
That's good timing.
Well, all you need to do at this point, Christian, is say, "Brilliant, thank you." We're saying our goodbyes, essentially.
Oh, great. Okay. Right. Well, Hazel, thank you so much for your time. It's been truly illuminating, and I can't wait for the release. You're going to see me at the front of the queue.
Fantastic. I can't wait either.
Did you hear my outro, by the way?
Me? No, I didn't hear anything.
Oh, I also used the word illuminating.
Oh, did you really? Shall I redo it and try a different...
That's obviously what it is, though.
It absolutely has been. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, Hazel. And I'm a massive supporter of this already. I'd say it's really illuminating, but it's already been used, so...
It's fine. We can use that word twice. It's a good word. Thank you very much for having me. It's been wonderful talking to you both.